reporting on the games you love by people who love to game. The MMO Reporter Network.
You're listening to Defiance Reporter, part of the MMO Reporter Network. Brought to you by GoDaddy. Put your website to work while you play. And Doghouse Systems. Choose your weapon, Doghouse Systems. Greetings, Ark Hunters. Hello again, everybody. We are going to talk Defiance. This is Defiance Reporter episode 45. The finale has happened, some events have happened, and there's a lot to discuss. So, with me today is Michelle. Hi, Michelle. How you doing?
Good, Ben. How are you? Are you crying now that the season is over?
Crying, not so much. Wondering what the heck I'm going to be doing with my Thursday nights? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I shed a couple of tears, but mostly I was just pumping my fist in the air because the episodes were so good.
Same as last week. I was hoping that both episodes would be good, and this week they were, but the second episode obviously was the better of the two. However, I felt that they flowed right into each other very well. I didn't even notice that the 2 hours were passing. So it was really good. Time flew. Mm-hmm. And I did not want it to end. It was such a cliffhanger. And we still haven't heard word as to whether or not the show's getting renewed.
I know. When it came time to look at what we have for Off the Set, as far as that segment, I thought, gee, nothing. And it's really it's just dead silence. Everyone's in limbo, so no one actually knows what's going to happen. So there's really not much going on off the set right now. But I know, I'm really hoping for it to be renewed.
Well, how long can they dilly-dally with this decision? I mean, the actors have other contracts to fulfill, and they have other gigs. If they're not getting this one, what are they going to do if the announcement comes way late?
From my understanding, there is some sort of hard deadline that I think Sci-Fi tweeted that it was supposed to be kind of the end of August, but it's probably like mid-September. I mean, it has to be really soon just because you're going into
the fall season.
You're going to fall season. You're going into a new quarter. So I would imagine we would know probably by the UK premiere date, which is the 18th, I think.
Yeah. Now, if this is the case, then I anticipate another year-long wait before season 3.
Yeah, if they do renew it. And I'm hoping they don't do some, reduced order or something. Like, if they renew, which hopefully they will, it's going to be for a full season. But, yes, I'm expecting that we'll have to wait kind of until, who knows? It could be for the fall season if they choose not to do a summer season for it again.
Well, let's hope that in the meantime, not just the series, but the world building that's been happening moves on to comic books and actual literature so that we can have some fun with this world while we're waiting for the show. I mean, we have the game, and the game is good, but we need other outlets as well. Agreed,
and watching this finale, so I loved both episodes. The only criticism I have for both of the episodes is that there's just not enough time to go into all the stories the way that you would like to see them played out. And so I'm just craving, I wish there were novels or comic books, graphic novels, just to go into some of the backstories, even if they were just filling in the gaps between episodes. I would just love it. There's just not enough time in a 42-minute show.
And we have perfect example of that later in the show. There was a lot of information I found on the Defiance website and through the Sci-Fi Sync app, and things that I guess were kind of implied in the show or hope that you figured out on your own that just weren't there. So, yeah, there's a lot of information to go through and not a lot of time to display it.
Hopefully when we go through the episodes, that fill us in on some of those blanks, because some of them you do kind of infer, but there are some really interesting details, especially regarding the Kaziri and the people that were kind of inhabiting the ship that I definitely did not know from watching the show.
Exactly. And we questioned them last time. So let's go ahead and discuss episode 12. All things must pass. And then we'll go ahead and talk about those other things.
starting the episode with a bang. I think this was the one that started with Daytak and Stama kind of renegotiating their relationship, and by that I mean they were sleeping together in the first 2 minutes. You had to kind of give it pause. You're like, well, we know why Daytak is doing this, but what's Stama's motivation here? I immediately was just like, what's she playing at? And sure enough, she was actually trying to convince Daytak not to kill basically all his cronies.
If he would come back, yeah.
Yeah, if he had come back. And then she started making all these demands. I think Stama got carried away with her power for a minute and was just adding up all these things. And even I was thinking, well, this is kind of a raw deal for Daytak. I mean, who would go back to that? And sure enough, he was kind of upset by her demands.
And you know what's sad is she had him for most of that. I mean, he was willing. He was so down in the slums right now that he was willing to give up some of his freedoms just to come back to the crew. But he was not willing to bend on that partnership.
That's right, that equal partnership. You have to wonder, like, she had named bathing alone, not killing everyone, never laying a hand on a lack. And yeah, it was the sharing of the business that he just was not ready for.
Pretty interesting stuff, but it just seemed kind of weird to see Stama back in Daytak's bed. I know that they were having hookups and Rhaegar was outside guarding the place, but I don't know. Stama had to have a reason to be there. She absolutely had to. Daytak, well, Daytak's in love with Stama. He's attracted to power, period. But he still ultimately has to be the wielder.
Right.
Stama being back in that bed felt like a step backwards towards her character, or for her character development.
Okay, you're hitting on something important because all through this episode, I couldn't tell whether I was getting annoyed by the way they were doing the tar banter. It got a little sitcom-y at times, and I felt, even though I was laughing through most of it, I'm glad they kind of did away with that. But also, I agree, I was shocked that she was in bed with him. And second, I was shocked by this like very human-looking negligee that she was wearing. It was like satin. It just reminded me of something like a human night porter would wear. It just was not very Castathan. And granted, I don't know what they wear to bed, but I've seen what they wear to the bath, and it's not like a negligee. So that kind of threw me off.
You've seen what she wore to bed. I mean, remember when she woke up and Daytak was there?
More of a robe kind of deal. Yeah, so this kind of satin thing. But I'm glad you said that Rhaegar was guarding outside. I didn't catch that, and that's important for the plot development later on because Stama and Daytak both get taken basically right after their encounter. They get kidnapped by, at this point, we don't know who. Did you know who was behind their kidnapping right away?
No, I had an inkling it was their crew, but I had no idea who it was or what the reason was. But, I mean, it's the Tars. You always expect some kind of backdealing and betrayal.
Yeah, I had no idea who it was either. For a minute, I thought maybe it was something to do with the Vitanis Collective, or I had no ideas. But luckily, we don't have to wait too long to find out. But in the meantime, the Tars are negotiating their relationship, their divorce settlement, and Nolan is trying to get Tommy back to Defiance to get him some medical help because he's basically bleeding out from where I should not say that, where Urzu stabbed him from that last episode. What did you think of the flashbacks? We immediately start in with a flashback of Tommy's. Did you like the way they did those?
The way they did them, not quite. I did like that most of the flashbacks were done in sepia tone, and I did like discovering more of Tommy's story without actually having to go back and rewatch them as we were there. This was more of a, I'm dying, so this is flashing through my past. I was okay with that. Really, I just wanted I wanted a reason to be upset at what his position is right now. I wanted something deeper than just, well, let's go through his past and see the things that he's missing out on again. Okay, you know how I keep saying that he keeps getting shit on? He just gets the shit end of the stick. Even in his flashbacks, he's getting the shit end of the stick.
Exactly. It's like, can he get his own? All of his flashbacks were related to giving depth almost to another character. Deshane Williams does a great job at Tommy because I love the character, even though his character is consistently just kind of a bounce back for another character, which is kind of annoying. But
he's the red shirt.
Yeah, exactly. The first flashback I really didn't like. It was just, it was just Nolan being Nolan, which we've seen a million times. But luckily, I think they redeemed themselves in the later flashbacks. And I like the way they combined some of the flashbacks with hallucinations, and, that was kind of cool.
I liked the whole proposal scene. I was very interested in that, and it was very much an Arissa reaction.
Yeah, that was great.
But I loved that we knew exactly when it happened and what Tommy was thinking as it happened, because Arissa was still wearing the outfit she wore to Christie's wedding.
Yeah, that was really good planning on the part of the art department. Just continuity. Defiance wins for it because she was in her feather attire. Tommy caught the bug. He caught the marriage bug, and that's so sweet.
Well, that's pretty typical. It's like if you're in a serious relationship, you go to a wedding, you start thinking about marriage, and it starts leading to things, and it inevitably ends up with a proposal.
Yeah, and it just makes you think how things would have been different if they had, like, what if they had gotten married, or what if they had stayed together even through all this Urzu business? Maybe things would have worked out differently for Tommy. Maybe he wouldn't have.
Unfortunately, I don't think that's the case. And the reason being is some of the information that we've discovered about Arissa and the Kaziri and what's been going on. There was no chance in hell that Tommy would have ever married Arissa. None.
Well, yes, maybe the wedding would have definitely been a catastrophe. It probably couldn't have happened with all of this. Maybe if he had had more stake, because I don't remember when he kind of said, okay, like, we can't do this anymore. That, they broke up and he went with Berlin, and it was when Arissa disappeared at the end of last season. That's right.
The reason why I say it couldn't happen and it never was going to happen was because the whole issue with the Kaziri started with her and that snake cult. Had that never happened, maybe there would have been a chance. But had that never happened, she would never have ended up in Defiance.
That's true, and they never would have met. So they were doomed from the start. If
Yes.
anyone was, I guess, the Romeo and Juliet relationship, it was those two, like star-crossed lovers, that it just doesn't work out.
Absolutely.
It was them. That's devastating. And meanwhile, as far as star-crossed, lovers, the old school Romeo and Juliet, Chrissy and Alak, Pilar is going to throw a wrench in their young marriage, I think. She's back in town, and
Let's talk about the scene where she's actually back and visiting Rafe.
That was one of my favorite scenes of this episode. It was heartbreaking and so well done. It was directed so very well. It was just amazing.
You knew Rafe longed for her, regretted ever doing what he had to do, but, he said it a couple episodes back. He chose his kids. You're picking and you're not wanting to do. It's like, okay, and this is going to be a little too much information, but when I was little, I was always spanked. I was a terrible kid. And my parents would always tell me, this hurts me more than it hurts you. Believe me.
Oh.
And it's that same principle. It's I'm doing this because it's good, it's right, I don't want to do it. So he got rid of Pilar in order to protect his children. But when she came back, you could see the longing in his eyes, the want to be a family again. Not necessarily the desire or the love to be with Pilar, but the want to have that family back, to have everything back to normal.
Graham Greene did an amazing job with that scene. And even if you stop to think about it, I mean, he was behind kind of a gate. They're doing this acting basically with half of his face hidden. I mean, he's got like one eye peeking out of the gate, and you could just see in his eyes the emotion. And I really liked it. And I think you're right. At first I thought maybe he still kind of longed for her, but I think you hit it on the head that he doesn't. And the state of that kiss that they had at the end of the scene, which was really pathetic, you can kind of see that they don't want each other. They don't. They're just longing for what was, which is just kind of so great because it's just a metaphor for the show itself and how humans are reacting. And, it was so well done.
You had mentioned it before. You said it was more like a goodbye kiss.
Yeah.
You're right. It does kind of reflect exactly what this show is doing. And it's building up relationships and tearing them down. It's seeing what we want to see and then giving us something completely different. And that's what Defiance is all about.
Exactly, and that's where it really excels. Remind me, did he actually give Pilar his blessing to talk to Christy, or he just kind of said, hey, have you talked to Christy yet, or have you? And she said, no, I haven't gone to see her yet, but you could already see the concern in Rafe's eyes, and he was kind of like, well, if you're unwell, I can get you help. Like, I can make sure you're okay. And I just felt so bad for him because he can't do anything. He's in Camp Reverie. He can't protect. His sole occupation this season has been to protect his family, and he can't do that now. And he was just so defeated. I just want to put Rafe in my pocket for that scene. It was just so good.
It really, really was. And no, he didn't necessarily give a blessing, and he probably never would have. But you're right. He was almost desperate to protect his children. And you could see his cheeks and his lower jaw were quivering like he didn't know what to do, and he was torn, and you're right. Defeated was the absolute perfect word for it. He was defeated.
Yes. There's nothing he can do, so Pilar goes to, she's going to go visit Christy. But luckily, so that scene was kind of a real downer, really heartbreaking. But then Doc Yule, who I think saved the viewer so many times during these episodes, because they're really dark. There's a lot of emotional heft going on in these episodes. And Doc Yule, even though she's going through her own thing, her snark and sarcasm just keeps you laughing, even though you may have just wanted to cry in the last scene. And it's really cool what they did with her ego implant, Lev. I'm so glad they brought her back. It's like, were you like, okay, this is way too Six and Gaius for me. Like, I'm over this.
No, this was great. I loved it. Her whole interaction was very much like Death of a Salesman. She was just down there by herself, talking to herself. Yes. And she was really talking to her ego, but it's just her. I mean, if you were sitting there and spying on this Indigene, you would think she's absolutely out of her gourd. Mm-hmm. And then the way they played all the cinematography on it was great, because Lev was sitting down over here, and then Doc Yule was talking, and then all of a sudden she was gone. But no, she's over here on the other side, like she's instantly teleporting, which she is, but you never see that movement, and you never get that, oh, well, she could have gotten up and walked. So if you had just come into Defiance that episode, you would not have known she was a hallucination until Doc Yule said so.
Right, which is just, they did that incredibly well. And even though you couldn't see much of Old St. Louis, where Doc kind of was hiding, the set design for that was still very, very cool. You could feel the expanse of the old city, but at the same time, you could totally feel out Doc's little space that she had made for herself. And
very much a one-act play.
It really was, and I could have probably watched it for a good, like, I could have watched a second and third act only of it's like a one-woman show. That's credit to, the writers and to Trina Keating for that. But there was actually a point, other than just levity, to these scenes. So while I'm freaking out about, how cool this is, that they're going this direction with the ego, turns out that Doc, she's got to traverse back through the old city because she doesn't have any food, but she comes across the Kaziri, which is the ship that everyone's been trying to find for who knows how many years, and Doc just stumbles upon it, it seems. But now, is that because it had been activated and maybe it was easier to, I don't know, find?
Whether or not it was activated, she didn't have any equipment to find it. She just kind of was there, and there it was. So, I mean, it's not like the ship moved.
Which just seemed very convenient. And that's fine. It can be convenient. We've only got an hour.
If Doc Yule found it that easily, then and there, why didn't they find it when they were chasing after Ben in season 1?
Right, because maybe, logic-wise, she goes way further into the old city because she doesn't want to be found. But still, it was convenient narratively. But hey, you've only got an hour, so that's fine.
Well, I was going to say, I think the Votanus Collective uses those tunnels for gun running as well. So I don't know. Maybe people just didn't notice that it was a big hulking ship until the lights came on.
Yeah, that's true. Until the on button was flipped.
But she conveniently found it, and it accelerated the storyline. That's when we found out that Lev was being hacked.
Yeah, that was so cool. It didn't have to happen that way, but I just love the way they made Urzu or the Arc Brain insert itself into kind of, everyone's interaction with this Kaziri. It shows how desperate the Kaziri AI kind of was, and it was just cool.
Well, it's exactly what's happening in the game. We just don't know who's doing it or why. But the Kaziri, which is the ship, its Arc Brain, or its artificial intelligence, has been stuck down there for 3,000 years. It's just been by itself, and all of a sudden, it's got Arissa to play with because she's got both pieces in her. So now it's starting to communicate through her and whoever she infects, and now it's got, all these little puppets to play with. Of course she's going to play with Lev, too. I mean, it's an ego device. It can be hacked.
It leads to one of the best lines of the episode, which is Doc saying, "Did you just hack my imaginary girlfriend?"
Yeah, that was a great line.
It's a great line.
So, moving from Doc and Lev, we're going to go back upstairs and talk about Pottinger and his misguided attempts to win his love.
Oh, good Lord. That is that's the perfect word. I mean, he just can't get his game together. I mean, I almost was like, okay, good. You're making a real, meal. You got some wine action going. He brought out a rose. And then he completely went into the direction of crazy.
Yeah, well, he's always been crazy. It's just, he was doing so good, and it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's more like 1 step forward, 2 steps back. I mean, that's, wow. Who kidnaps the enemy of the person you love and presents them gagged and bound as a gift for your disposing pleasure? I mean, that's just, wow.
It's like he's a misguided, kitten or a puppy that has slaughtered a squirrel or a chipmunk in your yard and thinks that you really want to have it, placed on your doorstep for you. It's just...
Well, this may go a little step beyond. This is a cat bringing a live bird saying, "Here, you want to shoot it?"
Sacrifice this bird. Just go ahead and kill it now. I think one of my favorite parts of this episode, as much as Amanda frustrated me in this episode, I also really liked some of her comments because I don't think she's really falling for Pottinger, because when he said, "Come with me, I have a surprise for you," her first line was, "I hate surprises." And I think she's drawn to him on a certain level, but she's still kind of like,
she likes broken people. That's what
she does, and she can't help it. And then when he finally shows her Stama and Datak, who had already, I think, had one of their domestic quarrels while they were down in that, what is it, is it an old grain silo or a water tower or something?
Something. It looked like a silo of some kind. But talk about casty marriage counseling. Wow.
That's the way to do it, right? You can make a lot of money in 24/7 if you just drop them down in a silo and let them go at it.
Well, you have to admit they made some progress, though.
They did. Yeah, because it took them a few scenes to get to that point. But yeah, they really had it out. And I did like that at one point, Stone was like, "I just should have run away with Kenny Rosewater, to the 3 hells with you." And I don't think Datak did too much growing in the early scenes. I think he was busy making excuses. But later on, he, I think, had a come to Raietsu moment, if you will.
Well, I mean, his, while misguided, negotiation tactics in keeping Stama alive were heartfelt, genuine, and again, misguided. But he did them. I mean, he genuinely still loves Stama, and that's what I love, that he did grow. He doesn't want to make her partner, but he still appreciates her, and he even admits as much.
Yeah, and I think that's why you can't help but love Datak. He knows exactly what he is. I think he really alluded to that at some point. He's like, "Oh, well, if I change or something, how much am I going to have to change?" Or he alluded to that at some point, and he's got it right. I mean, Stama married him because of who he is. He's not gonna change all of a sudden. His attitudes aren't just gonna change, at the whim. And even when Amanda did come down with the gun, I had a little chuckle because he didn't exactly sacrifice himself for Stama at first. He said, "Oh, no, she did kill Kenya. You're right, but, I kind of made her do it." He could have, if he really wanted to, have stepped out and said, no, I killed her in a jealous rage. He could have stuck his neck out, but he wasn't going to go that far.
He worked his way up to it, and then at the end he stuck his neck out. So, I mean, that counts for something.
Yeah. What were Stama's words? I think she said, "I think you appealed to something human in her." They were both just as befuddled as to why Amanda left them alone.
Me too. I'm sorry.
Oh, you think Amanda should have done it?
No.
Of course, we love the Tars. We don't want them to go anywhere, but...
Yes and no, because Amanda had every right to do it, but I know Amanda, she's not going to do it, but her reasons for not doing it confused the heck out of me. When she ran out yelling at Pottinger, I must have either listened to it way too fast and just missed everything, or missed the meaning behind it, but I was so confused.
I think I definitely was too. In fact, I laughed because she said, "We can't kill them until we have a plan," which is just such an Amanda Rosewater thing to say. And so I was too busy laughing to actually get why she was so kind of mad. But then at the very end of their conversations, she says, she's like, "No, I actually did want to kill her. I really wanted to just end her right then and there." And I think maybe right now she doesn't need someone who's going to basically enable her and give her a weapon or a gun. She needs someone who's going to calm her down and say, "Amanda, you're better than this." She needs that kind of Kenya presence. I think Kenya was a good balance for her, and she doesn't have that right now. And Pottinger definitely wasn't being very, he was enabling her, and I don't think she wanted it.
So what we take away from that scene is Pottinger knows nothing about Amanda.
Right. He's still just as off on his game as he ever was. And you would think someone who has been so obsessed with someone, like if we know this much about Amanda, you would think the psychopath who's obsessed with her would at least know that maybe she doesn't want him to have her kill a couple of people, just for revenge. He's been watching her for months.
I will take that reasoning and run with it. You're right. We do know Amanda. We know her well enough that she does the right thing, and the right thing is not killing the TARS. Right. We knew that. I was just very befuddled with the reasoning behind it. So she stomps off, doesn't kill, leaves Pottinger in the dust and confused.
I guess he just goes back down to the silo and is like, "Okay, I guess that didn't work. You guys are free to go."
Yeah,
I mean,
how did they escape?
Yeah, that's what I want to know. And whoever let them go, I would imagine that they would be dead. I wouldn't just think that Daytac's like, "Oh, thanks, pal. This was fun. You really helped us out here. We covered a lot of ground today." Like, no, the TARS don't just, they just said, "Okay, thanks, see you later." No, I don't know how that happened, but I hope it's in a deleted scene because...
Yeah, it sounds like there was a negotiation argument that happened that we missed out on, like Pottinger saying, "Look, we know you killed Kenya, and if you hurt any of us, that information is going to leak," or something like that,
Yeah. He still has all the E-reps behind him. Maybe he just said, "You try anything, if she didn't take you out, I'll take you out in 2 seconds flat." Maybe something like that. But yeah, all of a sudden they just appear later on in the scene, and you're like, "Oh, okay."
It's like, where the heck?
Yeah. Meanwhile, we get some really intense things with Tommy again. Poor Tommy.
Yeah.
What a way to go.
Can't get a break.
Yeah, he really can't. And I forget how far out Nolan was. I really wanted them to get to Defiance quickly. It's too bad they couldn't harness a hell bug and just have the hell bug, run.
Are you
run
kidding
them
me?
back to camp.
Hellbug would be on top of Tommy in a heartbeat.
Yeah, it would have made his death go faster, I guess.
Yeah.
It was like the slowest death ever. And when he finally does kind of expire, which I really wasn't expecting. I thought they would keep Tommy around. I didn't think they would kill him.
Yeah, it felt like that journey was all for naught. At least Nolan did it. But still.
Catharsis at the end, when Nolan kind of breaks down after Tommy's death, I found it very endearing because, Nolan hasn't always been honest or upfront emotionally with Tommy, and I think Tommy was Nolan's last link to who Orissa used to be before all this Urzu stuff started, and to lose Tommy in that way was just kind of a symbolic way of, the world that he used to occupy. So...
Well, but after all the shit he's given to Tommy, I felt like those tears were BS. They were just fake.
Oh, you think so?
That's just
yeah.
My logic is watching this outside. He may have had those feelings. As a character, Nolan definitely cried over Tommy's death. But as an outside viewer watching this, you couldn't help but be angry at Nolan for crying over a dead body when he could have been nicer to that person while they were alive.
Agreed.
Obviously, everybody's got their regrets when somebody passes and something like this happens. But still, it was such a crap thing to see. I felt like it was hollow.
You think it was hollow, and I, again, think that it was just another instance of Tommy serving as a way for another character to come to some sort of realization, which, same thing, poor Tommy, because even in death, you're still just kind of a way for Nolan to mourn Orissa instead of, you. So the whole thing, I felt, Tommy was just so cheated in this episode. I'm really upset. I'm mad. I think as much as Tommy annoyed me early on in the seasons, I'm going to miss having him around.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to imagine Defiance without our whipping boy, unfortunately. He is the
Yeah.
scapegoat of Defiance right now. But Defiance is going to be nothing without him.
Yeah,
Then again, we don't know what kind of Defiance we'll be coming back to.
that's a good point. And when they finally get back to Defiance, and I love how the next scene, like he dies, and then it's like, okay, well, too bad, because now we're here at the stasis net. It's like, oh, man, if only. But, things like that happen, so that happens. But even Berlin's reaction, I loved. I thought she did that very well. Once again, Berlin's kind of everywhere. I love how she's guarding the stasis net, at who knows what time in the morning. But she immediately knew it was Orisa.
Yeah, and she wasn't going to take any reasoning beyond the fact that it was Orisa. It doesn't matter if somebody's possessing her or if she's not in her right mind. Orisa did it.
Right.
So her and Orisa are going to have words.
Yeah, and oh man, we'll get to that in the next episode too. Orisa's going to have to come to terms with who did what and did Urzu do that, and it's going to be tough. But speaking of Orisa, so through this whole episode, she's kind of just sitting around playing with dust and rocks, which a lot of people thought that was a really cool kind of effect. She threw up the rocks and the dust, and that's how she was controlling the ships and the terraspheres. Did you like that parallel imagery?
It was nice. It was cool. I liked the way it was done. I don't like the fact that it was so easy to do, because she could have done that a long time ago.
Yeah, the logic to me in that was a little... Symbolically, it looks pretty, that's great, but you can't expect me to believe she was actually controlling, like that was how she was controlling. She could have done that with her mind, like you said, episodes ago.
Well, you have to keep in mind that she was trying to build, quote-unquote, her army, her followers, her saviors, the people she was saving. She needed to gather them up first, because you have to populate the planet after it's been terraformed, right? And you have to bring on the Votans and keep the collective race going. But it was kind of hard to believe that she took a handful of dust, threw it up in the air, and they all stayed, and that represented the number of ships in the Arc Belt. I mean, just happened to be the exact number,
Yeah, it was more like, I accept this on an artistic, this looks really cool, but unless Urzu is just a really visual person, she's like, I gotta map this out. I can't just do this in my head. I gotta have something in front of me. It just didn't. It was only meant to be symbolic, and that's fine, but I couldn't read anything else.
It would have been better had she made the journey down to the Kaziri and controlled it from the ship. That would have made more sense.
Yeah, that whole thing was weird. Maybe she didn't want... I'm not going to read too much into it, because there's just no explanation, but...
There isn't. I mean, it's Votanus technology. We don't understand it. I mean, we'll just leave it at that. Now, there was some interesting information that I found that explains the beginning of the next episode and all of the information that we seem to be missing throughout this season regarding what the heck is going on. So, the history of the Kaziri is pretty much explained as such. 3,000 years ago, a secret council of indigenes built the Kaziri to terraform the Earth before the rest of the fleet arrived. Okay, and we figured that out in Season 1. Ashi and Rimlu were the Orisa and... what was his name? Kai. I wanted to say Ko. Orisa and Kai, are direct descendants of Ashi and Rimlu, and they look exactly like them. So this was the big confusion for me, was... are they those people, or are they descendants of those people, or are Ashi and Rimlu being reborn again and again? It was very confusing.
Mm-hmm. It was.
But Ashi and Rimlu volunteered for this mission unaware of what it entailed. When they awoke in Earth's orbit, they realized the planet was inhabited and decided to mutiny rather than commit genocide. So that's where we come in, seeing all those flashbacks with Orisa. When Ashi and Rimlu, the Erathian mutineers, who disabled the Kaziri, took the tendril artifacts into their bodies, the artifacts became imprinted with their DNA, not information you hear in the episode. This bond was passed down from generation to generation. That's why Orisa and Kai share visions of events that happened thousands of years ago. Orisa and Kai are direct descendants of Ashi and Rimlu. So there's that confirmation.
And I'm glad that we're going over this, because that was the most confusing point of this whole thing. I wasn't sure why the Kaziri or the Keys were still kind of attached to Orisa and Kai, even though they're not necessarily supposed to be the same people that were on the ship. But it being imprinted on the DNA makes a lot more sense. So that clears a whole bunch up for me.
So the survivors of the Kaziri crash went into hiding. Okay, you remember it was a full ship of Votans, and this was 3,000 years ago. So we've had Votans on Earth for quite a while. They realized that if they revealed their existence to mankind, it would jeopardize the rest of the Votan fleet's chance for survival when they arrived in 2013. Most of them died off over the years, though at least one of them wrote down their experiences. Now this is interesting. These documents were transcribed over the years, and the message became garbled. During the Pale Wars, a Kazakhstan named Daigo discovered these writings. Taking them as prophecy, he founded the Snake Cult, which began to experiment on young Erathian girls in search of a messiah who would bring about the end of the world. This being Ashi. So, now we understand Daigo, we understand why the Kaziri was in their hands, and why it ended up in Orissa.
Now, that's something that I really did not know that I think's super cool that I wish they could have. Like, they need a comic book, they need a graphic novel stat to explore this, because this gives all the survivors of the Kaziri crash, like, it's so cool. So I get that most of them died off. That makes sense.
Well, I would imagine they'd all be dead by now. And it's just descendants of descendants of descendants.
And they don't have anything imprinted on their DNA to kind of link them to those ancestors, right?
It's more like the ego implants. The ego implant is in them. The Kaziris, the two halves, are in each person, and because it's been in them for so long, that DNA imprint is there. So whenever they have a descendant, I'd assume, I don't know how the Kaziris ended up out of them. I don't know if when a child is born that they get part of the Kaziri or what, because eventually they're knots, and they're separated, they look just like metal pieces, and one of them was put inside an Erathian little girl. Mm-hmm. It's still a little convoluted, there's still holes in the story, but it's clearer now than it was before.
Yeah, it's a lot clearer. And I had another question that I think will come up in the finale about exactly, how they're kind of magnets, or how exactly Kai pulls the, key back out of Orissa, and it just kind of magically...
Because he's got that DNA tie.
So it's like it just kind of attracts...
It belongs in Kai. It belongs in Kai because that DNA, it matched. So I imagine that when the ship is being controlled by those two Votans, they have their own Kaziri in them, their own keys. Each one has a key, and then they're controlling the ship. And when they're controlling the ship, I mean, the Kaziri's not trying to come into one of them. It's separate. It's in each one. So I think that it imprints in a host, and it stays there. It knows it belongs there.
And then why... Right, and so that I can totally get, that makes sense in my brain. And then when Orissa has both of them in her, though, it seems that the Kaziri even would think that, okay, well, something's not right here. But I guess the Kaziri has one mission, and that's to kind of terraform, the Earth. And so maybe the Kaziri, the Arc Brain, doesn't care like where the two parts are coming together. All the Arc Brain cares about is that this is activated and controlling the ship in the terraspheres.
Right. Well, I mean, the ship needs two keys to turn on. It's like a missile silo needs two keys turned at the same time to launch, And it was happy enough to have one host for both keys, as long as both keys were active in somebody. Now, if you had two hosts and you kept them separate, then there's no communication between the two keys, because it's like two halves of a brain.
Okay, yeah. My questions, I think you can answer... You'll definitely answer them when we get to the end of the finale, because I had a bunch of questions come up with that last scene where they were, it took like 10 minutes, but but they saved the world.
All right, so episode 13, the finale, I Almost Prayed. Now, this was one heck of an episode.
Oh, man, so much happened. So, and it starts off just immediately, like, we don't even know how Nolan got to where I don't even know how he found Kai or how far he had to go to find Kai, but he's tracked down Kai. And we see him have his own flashback, I think,
yes,
before Nolan finds him,
absolutely,
which is one that we saw before, I think. So he knows he's linked. He knows something's wrong. And Nolan comes and says, hey, you're the missing link here. You're coming with me. And Kai's really reluctant to do that, as we all probably would be.
Which is very interesting, because the Kaziri doesn't want him near. But at one point, she wanted Kai in her little army.
Yes, you mean, but not, you're not talking about later in the episode when she possessed when she...
Talking the first time we saw Kai. First time we saw Kai, she kissed him,
yeah.
and she wanted to save him. And he said, "You're crazy, I'm leaving." And I think that was Erissa's part saying, "I've seen you in my visions, maybe you can help me," right before the Kaziri finally took her over completely.
Right.
So it's very interesting how it starts off with, "I need your help," and then, "Keep the hell away from me."
Right, I took what I needed, and now you need to stay really far away, otherwise you're going to ruin everything.
Right.
And Nolan kind of is piecing all this together. I mean, he knows that Kai is the missing link here, and he kind of understands that, at this point, Nolan understands that Erissa's got, something in her that Kai can help extract. And I'm not sure how he knew that, but he knows that.
He doesn't. Nolan is going off of gut instinct. He's got to find some way to save his baby girl and the world at the same time, and he knows Kai's got something to do with it, so he's going to bring Kai along with him. He doesn't know what's going to happen. Nobody does. We just kind of play it by ear. Now, I do have to say, Kai, very interesting character. I absolutely loved him, and he was very much fun this episode.
He was great, and he's always good. He also provided some, not necessarily comic relief, but just kind of a breath of fresh air, if you will, just because he's almost as befuddled as we are. He's like the extension of the viewer, because he's like, what? Like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing here, but, Nolan, I trust you on this. And so that's all in the first 2 minutes.
Yeah, he didn't absolutely trust Nolan until Nolan said, Erissa's going to destroy the world. He's like, oh, okay, I'll help.
Yeah, he's like, I can volunteer for that then.
Because he's like, I don't want anything to do with your daughter. Get the hell away from me.
He's like, she kissed me and infected me with something. Like, he thought he had like an STI or a sexually transmitted infection or something.
He got mono.
Yeah,
mono and hallucinations.
It's an extreme version. That's fantastic. And while all of this is going on, Daytak comes back to his house. So Stama, oh man, one of my favorite scenes in the last episode, we totally forgot to talk about.
Totally skipped it.
Oh my gosh.
Poker night.
Yeah, it's so skippable because it was kind of tacked on at the last, it was like one of the last scenes, and there's so much else going on. But yeah, Daytak pulled an amazing Stama feat and playing poker with his buddies, and the fact that I didn't realize this was happening, I guess, when I first watched it, but, he's got on gloves and everyone else doesn't, and he passes the cards around. I love that scene. It was a great throwback to season 1. It was like full circle, complete parallel, and I like that it narratively showed that Stama and Daytak are now on the same page and they're back together, and you just know that because of that scene.
They are a team of 2. That's all they need.
Yeah.
They stuffed that storage drain, that runoff drain, so full of Otins, it was funny.
My favorite was when Stama, stomped her foot on it to, kind of help Daytak, close it up. That was just fantastic. They're, the best married couple ever.
Oh, my God. Poor Raiga.
Oh.
That was the one that hurt, was seeing him die, because he was such a stand-up guy this whole season. He was looking out for the crew, not for Stama or Daytak. He was looking out for the guys.
Okay, so that was another question I had. For a minute, I thought, really? Rhaegar would betray Stama? I know he would betray Daytak in a heartbeat, but he would really kind of throw Stama under the bus, too?
If it had something to do with the guys, yeah.
That's really cool. I kind of like that. This makes me want to see, a whole mob spin-off of, the Tars and their clan, because they've got their own little hierarchy even amongst the cronies, which is really cool. Oh, because Daytak killed what's-his-name. That's right. They're all mad at him for that.
And Daytak came in, killed one of them, tried to take his crew back, and then they all pummeled him. That's why they were afraid. If Stama came back and let Daytak back in the household, into the business, well, we all helped beat him up. We don't want him back. Are you crazy?
Right. Who knows?
And we know exactly what can happen. We play a friendly game of poker.
Yeah, really, really friendly. That was great. And, of course, it leads us into the next episode when Daytak comes home with his little pouch of belongings that he claimed from his bachelor pad. And who should be with Stama in the drawing room but Pilar, who I guess has come to say that she wants Christian Lilac to stay with her. I don't even know if she has a house yet, but I appreciate her taking initiative, even though I think it was a little too much too soon. But did you notice the way that Stama kept saying her name? she was like over enunciating her name, and it was just perfect line delivery from Jamie Murray. She kept calling her Pilar.
It was an awkward scene, but you have to give it to Pilar. I mean, she was standing up for what she wanted, and she was being a mom. And I think that was the impression that the writers were trying to give you. She's being a mom. She's bringing back this family. She's putting it back together.
Yep, and she's being a little embarrassing at the same time. That's such a mom.
Right. And we never, ever get the hint that she's doing something fishy until the diner scene.
Yeah, which was a really cool scene. And we should have all known something was up when she mentioned horses. Because we all know that horses are gone, and that's like a thing. I don't even know if it's in the show, really, but it's just kind of a known thing.
It's very
gamers.
much, yeah, it's a very often repeated anecdote between Tryon and Sci-Fi, and the fact is that they wanted mounts in the game. Sci-Fi wanted to do horses because it's a science fiction western. Frontier type, gotta have horses, you know? Mm-hmm. Tryon was saying, no, it's really difficult to animate horses in the game. And so they agreed on cars running on futuristic fuel. So there are no horses. In the Defiance Bible, horses were killed out.
And she claims that this little kibbutz or commune up the street or wherever has, it's great and they can raise their child there and it won't be ridiculed because Defiance is no longer free. This imaginary place is basically what Defiance was supposed to be. Oh, one thing about the scene with Pilar and Stama and Daytak, I actually really liked the way their conversation showed you what the characters had been like way back in Defiance. I really like that. It's a way to not have to do a flashback scene, but you still get some exposition. So I really liked that awkward banter between all of them. But she finally sits Christy and Alak and Quentin down for a meal in Defiance's only restaurant, the diner.
Train car diner?
Yeah, the train car diner, where Christy used to be a waitress. I guess she married up. She doesn't have to do that anymore. But that you can tell she's like really wanting. You don't know what exactly is going on or what she's trying to do here, but she wants them to come with her, and it gets a little creepy.
Well, something's up, not because of how much Pilar is pushing that scene, but how much Quentin is sitting there quiet and awkward. And something's up. And you know what? I want to take a knife and stab Quentin in the face right now.
Because he's just so annoying.
He's not growing up, but he's got this misjudged loyalty towards his mother. Okay, every boy's got loyalty to his mother. It's a mama's boy thing, I understand that you haven't seen her in years, and this reunion is filling a hole you think that you've been having for years. Later you're going to find out, well, nothing's ever going to fill that hole, and this person really isn't your mother. But in the meantime, he needs a knife to the face very, very badly.
He does. And even Pilar, what's so funny is he's got this, misguided loyalty to his mom, but Pilar's not exactly nice to him. Like, even at the end of that scene when he's like, that place doesn't exist, she's like, yeah, genius, get the check. I mean, even she has no respect for him. And it makes me feel they could have done more interesting things with his character. Maybe they're saving that up for season 3, but right now he's just kind of a foil. It's almost like he's just there to eventually help Pilar kidnap Alak and Christy, which is what eventually happens. But she does convince them. So oddly, Christy says, no, like, our life is here. But she does convince them to go on some sort of, I guess, day trip visit to this imaginary commune. And they're all kind of
just
getting ready to go. Yeah, just to see the horses. That whole thing, that was a little fishy. And then, of course, it ends in the both of them being kidnapped at gunpoint.
Yeah, and you know what? Again, Quentin, little asshole. I am so mad at him. Ever since we found out that he was, or when he came back into Defiance and faced Rafe, he's got this smugness to him, like, I am absolutely right, you are absolutely wrong, I hate you for doing what you did, and nobody can ruin my plans. I just do not like him. Now, Pilar, I am becoming very, very intrigued with. I know she's sick. We can see that. I mean, she's acting not quite all there. She looks like something's fishy. And then the kidnapping. Why is she doing the kidnapping? Where is she going to take the kids? Why does she want the kids? What the heck is going on?
Yeah, I don't know. And where could she possibly be taking them? I mean, she was
and
way
does Quentin
out.
know? Does Quentin really know what the plans are?
I don't think he even knows what Pilar's kind of next move is ever. Because he didn't seem to know that she was going to pull out this imaginary commune in the first place, so...
Well, you do anything to convince to get your ultimate goal, but does he know what the ultimate goal is, or does he know that she just wants to get them out of Defiance?
And be a family again. Yeah.
I mean, she could have told him anything, and we'll find that out in Season 3, I hope. With the kidnapping, we see one of the handmaidens come running up to Daytak and Stama and explain to them what happens, which leads to the best team-up ever.
Oh my gosh. That whole sequence of scenes, I think, is one of my favorite sequences in the entire season.
But
as convenient as it all was, it was my favorite.
Let's not talk about it yet, because I want put Berlin in there first. But even before that, let's talk about the big, oh my god, what the hell just happened?
Which one?
New York.
Oh my gosh, you mean like the huge, like, world-ending rave that happened in Manhattan. Oh my gosh. So yeah, Arissa is controlling her, rock candy up in the air, and the Terrasphere, that's so cool. They destroy Manhattan, or they destroy it. They terraform Manhattan. The Earth had already been terraformed before, right?
There's a difference. The world being terraformed was because that something happened to the Ark ships up in the Ark Belt, and half of them came crashing down to the world, and they're loaded with these terraspheres. So the terraspheres go off, and they create this massive change to the world in certain places where the ships fall. This, what we see, is more like what the terraforming was supposed to be like when the Kaziri hovered over Earth. It was going to be precise, controlled. There was going to be spears all over the world and cleaning up and changing the land. And it's not necessarily destroying, but it's kind of like deatomizing and then rearranging those atoms to be more like home.
Which would not have supported humans, right? Because Manhattan's completely kind of gone. So people are, I'd imagine, if you lived in Manhattan at that time, you would, and you were a human, you would have not survived.
Yeah, you're dead. Your atoms have been spread across. You're part of this tree, part of that animal. You are now completely alien and don't exist.
It's like a much prettier nuclear biological weapon, maybe.
if you can call destruction beautiful, which most people do.
Yeah, it was here with a beautiful score. It's an interesting aesthetic choice that this all happened with, like, very prettily, with, like, purple and, strobe lights going. It was a very interesting way to do it.
Don't knock the purple. I love the purple.
It totally fits with, because, terraformed Earth has these beautiful colors, and as much as it's changed, even the Cassithan Gardens, like, it's all very beautiful. So
Earth has its blues
sense.
and greens, and Votans have their purples and greens too, I guess.
Yeah. New York is destroyed, and I wish we could have seen more of how that news gets back to Defiance. It kind of slowly gets back to Defiance because it's been destroyed. So I guess word travel's kind of slow once your entire command center is gone. But guess who's still back in town? Viceroy Mercado was on his way to New York, but got turned around because of what happened. And so he's safe. He's perfectly fine. And I'm so happy.
So now that EREP headquarters is pretty much gone, and most of the EREP army with it, what do you think is going to happen in Season 2?
See, I don't know, because, of course, Defiance is going to be the new Earth Republic, I guess, home base, but the point was in the next season to kind of go to different places. So I'm hoping we get out of Defiance a little bit. So
you think Defiance is going to be the new home of EREP, but
yeah,
EREP forces have now just been practically decimated. Don't you think the Votanus Collective is going to take advantage of that?
Well, I did because what was interesting is that the Earth Republic thought that they knew Manhattan and New York had gone dark, and they're like, okay, this is just a part of the war. This is probably a Votanus Collective attack. The war is no longer a Cold War. We're starting battle. And then they realized that the Votan town in Belize, I think Viceroy said, also was destroyed.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing that Votans survived this terraforming since they can live on the planet like this, so they're fine?
I don't think so. There's a reason why the Votans were on the ships, or were planning to be on the ships while the world was being terraformed.
Okay, yeah.
It's a violent process. People are going to die.
Yeah, okay, so they're gone too. So maybe if there's all this destruction, we're kind of starting over again. So maybe the Ereps and Defiance are it for now. But wait, they only destroyed, we don't know what cities they managed to destroy. We
All
know
we know is
Belize,
Belize
New
and New
York.
York. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that may have all that she had done. But New York was still a big headquarters for EREP, so a lot of the army, at least the higher ups, are gone. And I'm guessing training was done in New York as well. So new recruits and higher ups. And whoever's left outside who's been in other posts, I guess they're fine, but that's all that's left of the army.
Man, they've got a tough road to climb.
Yeah.
Chat room's chiming in and they're saying all kinds of good stuff. So Musings of Raven is in here and Fias, and they're basically confirming that, yeah, this is what terraforming would have looked like if it had worked appropriately the first time. And it's some scary stuff.
Yeah. New York's gone. Belize is gone. We have a big scene in the office where we're discovering all of this information, and then Nolan runs in with Kai.
Yeah. This whole scene, this particular scene in the mayor's office kind of harkened back to season 1 for me. It felt a little, I don't know, buffoonery almost. Like I was just like, okay, what else are you going to throw in the pot? Like Nolan's like, no, I've got this crazy theory here and it'll work.
And Nolan's not the only one with a crazy theory. Doc Ewell comes in and they're forced to believe her.
Well, and it's like, of course, who do you believe? You've got, the science over here with Doc Ewell, and then you've got
the guy who's saved the town every time.
Yeah, I know. And it's so funny that you make a good point, because Nolan usually is always kind of right. He always does the right thing. He always saves the world. And you would think that kind of, street cred would help him out here, but everyone just kind of throws him under the bus. Like he hasn't been there for the last couple of seasons saving the town. Especially Amanda, she's like, no, we're going with Ewell here.
So
it just felt a little weird. And then the whole face-off with Nolan putting a gun to the Viceroy, and then Amanda picking up a letter opener and holding it to Kai's throat. I mean, clearly Nolan knew Amanda wouldn't kill Kai. That felt a little too much.
No, I wouldn't have believed that Amanda would have even grabbed that letter opener and held it up to Kai in the first place. She has changed. She's changed a lot.
Yeah.
Had she remained the same person she was in season 1, she would not have done that. She does a lot of loud talking and a lot of pouting when it doesn't work. She doesn't get called to action unless it involves her sister.
True. And who's no longer around now, so...
Yeah, so it was very interesting to see that she even did that, and Nolan realized that as well. So he tried to call her bluff and then decided against it.
So really everything kind of stays the same after all of that happened. Nolan gets taken to, the lawkeeper's office, and not in a good way, and they choose Doc's approach, which the problem with Doc's approach is I wasn't really sure exactly the science behind her approach, but she has to kill Arissa in order for it to work.
Right.
So she's basically annihilating one of the keys, I'm thinking, or she's annihilating the mechanism inside her,
the host.
I guess.
She's killing the bloodline off. 2, she's killing the host so that the parasite can't work it. So there's nowhere else for at least one of the Khaziris to go, and that'll effectively stop this for good. Amanda's right. It's what's for the best of Defiance. Doc Ewell's right. That would probably have worked. But Nolan's way is usually the way most heroes take, which is try to save as many people as possible, including the person who's doing the damage.
Right, especially if it's not their fault.
And I cannot forgive Amanda for doing what she did, because while Nolan was doing the same thing in the episode where Kenya was alive and held hostage, in the end, he helped her.
Oh, I didn't even think about that angle, that maybe she's just kind of tit for tat kind of deal. I didn't even think about that, but that could have been a possibility. But yeah, I was actually really angry at her. I just didn't see that approach was doing anything for her. I mean, Nolan's always come through for her. He's always generally right, even when he's wrong. And that just felt kind of weird and a little bit out of character. Not to mention, now that you explain this, Doc Ewell's idea is actually a lot more harebrained than Nolan's.
Right.
But so that whole office thing happens, and Amanda actually volunteers to shoot Arissa, which I also thought was kind of weird and just out of character. And at first I thought she was volunteering to shoot Arissa because she was going to end up helping Nolan in some regard.
No.
But that wasn't the case. She just was like, no, I can do this and I'll do it.
And I understand why she thought that. It was her responsibility. She made the choice. She locked up Nolan. She might as well be the one to pull the trigger.
If you're going to do this, then you got to get out there and do it. Okay, that's pretty noble.
I'm going to say something that sounds very sexist because it is, but it's old school way of thinking. It's she manned up.
I can get with that. If you're going to say that, hey, we're going to kill your daughter, then you got to be kind of man enough to...
Yeah, she pulled a John Wayne. That's exactly what she did.
I kind of respect that a little more. Even if I don't respect what she's doing, I respect that part of what she was doing.
The thing is, her decision was a good one. It was the right one. I just felt hostility towards it because it's Arissa. And she knows Arissa.
And we're attached to the characters, whereas... Actually, Amanda, it's like it's too bad she's not still mayor, because that's pretty much the decision you would want your mayor to, or anyone, in charge, you would want them to make that same decision.
And that more and more we see that's exactly where she belongs. Except when any issues come up dealing with her sister, because then she makes shit for brains decisions.
Thank God she's not around anymore.
Knock on wood. You never thought you'd say that again, did you?
I know, right? Amanda will now be able to, be an elected official again. So this decision's eventually taken out of Amanda's hands anyway, because Nolan, of course, overpowers, the little E-reps. Yeah, which it was actually fun to watch because Kai kind of swoops in at the last moment to help him out. And
what's up with recycling weapons? I mean, we got the letter opener in the office, and we got the fire extinguisher.
You know what? I kind of like it. It's like inside jokes. And the fire extinguisher was even more of an inside joke, because I don't think they actually acknowledged it.
They didn't. But, I mean, we all knew. That was the same fire hydrant that Amanda used on Nolan.
Hey, maybe, it's hard out there for a props department. You gotta use...
What about the craziness of Nolan taking a direct blast to the chest with a freaking stun gun?
Right, and then just kind of being okay with it. It was like he's a bioman all of a sudden.
He powered through it. He stayed awake just to intimidate that person, and then, bam, extinguisher to the back of the head.
He's like, are you going to fall over? Like, Kai's just funny. He's so funny and befuddled. It was pretty...
Because he didn't know what the heck was going on. He did not belong there, but I am so happy he was, because that made that scene so much funnier.
Yeah, it was actually a joy to watch. Yeah, it made it a lot less boring because, you watch Nolan, you're like, oh, okay, we know what's about to happen. He's going to get away. We've seen this many, many times before. But they actually made this one really entertaining.
He is such the rogue element. He's a scrappy fighter. He fights to win, so it's not underneath him to cheat. He's also using intimidation tactics, and he's always getting punched first, though. And it just makes me laugh every time.
It's not an episode of Defiance if Nolan doesn't get punched in the face by someone.
So he frees himself. He runs off with Kai.
Well, they all seem to know exactly where Arissa is.
Yeah, well, because she's got that camp out there. They know where the camp is.
I guess they just follow... Well, they follow the camp and all those flying rocks. They're like, wait, what's that?
Cloud of rocks.
And Amanda's really getting ready to shoot her. Thank goodness she's kind of being slow about it because Nolan kind of comes up at the last minute. And if you notice, he's running on ice. So my favorite part is when he's running towards Pottinger, but he looks really uncomfortable for some reason. Nolan's expression in that scene made me laugh, even though it shouldn't have, because I know it was really serious. But I noticed he was running on snow, and I was like, well, that can't be fun.
I must have overlooked that fact. I missed that.
Yeah, he just looks so like a huge... kind of it was just funny. It made me laugh. But he does manage to shoot the gun out of Amanda's hand, I think. Cuffs her to the roller, knocks out Pottinger, knocks out Yule. I
don't blame him for doing it. And I know she kind of did ask for it,
Well, she almost literally did. I thought it was so fun because he kind of got her consent to do it.
Well, yeah, and
she said something and he was like, I only brought one pair of handcuffs.
He's been on her ass this entire season because she lied. And he's been giving her the side eye the entire season. And I think she's been asking for it and he's been wanting to give it to her. But they've got mutual respect for each other. They're not enemies. And this is one of those things where he's going to knock her out and then after this is all said and done, they're going to go to the Needwant together and have a beer. That's just the kind of relationship they have.
It's just an understanding, and that's why I really liked that scene. Meanwhile, Amanda just doesn't get it. She's like screaming her head off, and it's like, okay, like just at this point, just let it go. After that, so he knocks Yul out, and then he takes Kai towards Orissa because he knows what's supposed to happen here.
And then Orissa and Kai share tongues, or tentacles, or tendrils.
Yes, all the above. It's almost anticlimactic in a way because it's like, well, great, that's all it took, and now the keys are separate again.
And Orissa, all of a sudden, the cloudiness in her mind is gone, and the realization of everything she's done floods in, and she's in so much anguish.
Yeah, I felt so bad for her, and Stephanie did a great job acting in that scene because the scene wasn't actually that long, and the emotions that they went through. And with Nolan, he was very understanding. And then what I thought was really poignant, and I wonder if he actually meant this, but Orissa's like, give me your gun. I don't deserve to live. And he's like, no, we still have a job to do. Like, we're not done here. But if after we save the planet, if you still want the gun, I promise I'll give it to you.
Now, when I watched the episode, I had tweeted immediately that is not what a father should tell his daughter.
I agree. Talking about making promises that hopefully you won't keep.
But after having digested that scene, it was the absolute right response from Nolan because, one, Orissa is so overcome with grief, there was no talking to her. None. And two, you do whatever you can to calm down your baby girl. Make her feel better than how she's feeling because you know she's feeling like shit. And then still try to save the world.
Yeah, I thought it was just kind of one of those new Earth norms. It's like, okay, we're not in Kansas anymore. This is how father-daughter relationships are in 2047. You just have to do what you have to do. But it was so, I liked the way that they did it because, how long are, Orissa's going to feel really shitty. And you also know that you've got, more left to do. And I like the way they did the scene because Nolan's like, you got to get up, you got to stop whining. And, he didn't do it in a way, he did it in such an empathetic way that I was really proud of Nolan in that scene. Just because you could tell he was crushed for her too.
Yeah.
But he got her off her feet. And then this next 10 minutes, down in the old St. Louis with the ship, I just thought it was so rushed and a little bit anticlimactic. But that's only because there was all this other stuff going on at the same time with other characters that was so riveting and so well done that at this point it's like, okay, well, we know they're going to save the world. I'm not worried about this at all.
Yeah, once they separated the Kaziris, we knew everything was fine, but we had to finish the job. And just like Nolan said, we got to get up and finish this. A lot of things did happen, and it was very anticlimactic, but it was just a mere reflection of exactly what happened when they took over the ship. It was them performing the mutiny again, and that's how you stop the whole thing, because that's the known way of stopping it. And at the very end, we see that Nolan and Orissa are saved by the Kaziri.
Okay, so now this is my big question. They end up in one of the
stasis pods.
Yeah, someone on, I think maybe Dickens called it a Prius of New Earth, just this energy efficient vehicle. So they're in those, and I couldn't figure out, because everything's falling apart around them, and I couldn't actually figure out how they got into one of those pods, if they automatically were just put into one, or if they, kind of ejected someone out of theirs. How did they get there?
When Orissa started putting other Votans, her followers, to save them, into these pods, it's the ship. They're camped over exactly where the ship had fallen. They're right over the ship. So the ship basically just sends these things up, and it encapsulates them and brings them back down, and it works the same way the Kaziri does. The Kaziri sends out the tendrils, encapsulates you, and brings you back down. While all this terraforming was supposed to happen, and it didn't happen, and the ship basically was destroying itself and getting buried in Old St. Louis, they remained safe because of this encapsulation, and they are now in a stasis sleep. Which, one, do they dream? Do they have any thoughts? Because if so, Orissa is going to come out ever more so tortured than she is now.
That's a great start to a season 3. I hadn't even thought of that. I assumed that they were in such like a heavy sleep, but I guess maybe it's like a coma in some regards, that you still...
Active mind.
Yeah, and so you are kind of having certain thoughts. Oh, that's horrible. That makes me feel so bad for her.
1, it's a damaged ship. 2, we don't know if this life support system is going to even last for these people in hibernation, like Birdie and Sukar. And 3, if there is going to be a new season in a year, how are they going to get rescued? How are they going to come out of that bubble?
Oh, it's funny that you say bubble, because Musings in the chat room just said, yeah, the Votan bubble of life. But you're right. How long is it going to be? And you would imagine that, if we get a season 3, they're going to use the same kind of timeline. So time's still going to be progressing. So what, a year later, they're going to be okay. I kind of like the idea that if the ship is broken, then these pods actually don't last. And someone's, going down there and excavating, because, I would imagine that the E-Reps or whoever wouldn't want to just let this dormant. Like, people have been looking for the ship forever. They have to have known what's happening. They're not just going to let the ruins sit there without exploring it, I would imagine.
Right.
So I would hope they would go find it immediately and then, do something. I don't know if they want to research the pods or the people in the pods or what, but...
I'm sorry. Fias in chat room.
Yeah.
Food doesn't last forever, even in a Ziploc bag. You are so right. And
it's true. We've only
that's hilarious.
got a limited amount of time.
Well, I don't know. Sometimes you pull something out of the freezer that's been in there for a year, and it's still okay.
Yeah, it may not taste the same, so they may not be the same people, but all I know is that Sukar was forever present in, like, a bunch of scenes, because his pod was always kind of visible on screen, and this just makes me think that Sukar will rise again.
Well, you can't kill Sukar. You cannot kill Sukar.
Can't.
So, while all this is happening, right before Nolan and Arissa are encapsulated and the world's still going crazy because there's disco lights up in the sky, Berlin makes her way over to Camp Reverie. And when she gets there, she finds the soldiers of Camp Reverie executing prisoners because of what's going on. And the soldiers want to get the heck out of there, but they're not going to leave the prisoners there. So they start executing them. Firing line.
This scene, again, this sequence of scenes was one of my favorites, probably all season, because it was so disturbing. And I think it's so real life, and that, anytime you see executions like that or lines of executions, of course it's disturbing. But then the way that they made, like, Berlin comes up to the guy and she's like, "What are you doing?" And his reasoning was just, he's just trying to deal with a problem. He's not thinking about what he's doing. He's just trying to deal with his job. He's like, hey, I've got prisoners who are rioting. This is the way I'm handling it. And it's like his humanity had gone out the window because he's trying to handle this problem. And I just thought that it was so, this is what I like about the show. That's the way a lot of things in real life are happening. Like, people are not thinking about what they're actually doing. They're in kind of this siloed mentality, and they're handling their own problem in their own way. And that scene was so disturbing. And it also, you saw Berlin come to terms with, maybe things aren't all good here in the E-Rep, mentality. Because she's kind of put the Earth Republic on a pedestal all this time.
Right, and then a soldier goes and disobeys a direct order from a superior officer and puts her in the line. She is about to be executed. Which
is so heartbreaking. Oh, man. And she's right next to Rafe.
And they basically give each other a begrudging acknowledgement and farewell right before they're about to get shot. And who comes in to rescue them, to save the day?
And not even knowing how much they were saving the day. The great thing about the TARS in these last 2 episodes is that they're just kind of doing their own thing. They have no idea how their actions are actually affecting everyone else. Daytak's just like, he goes up to Berlin because he thinks she's in charge, basically, and he's like, hey, sorry for shooting your guy there, but we need Rafe here. And then they just kind of disappear, and all Berlin could do is laugh.
And it's not just, okay, and by the way, I loved that laugh, because when she did that, it was just so awkward and so bewildered, and
yeah,
it fit her, and I loved it. I could rewind that scene and listen to it again, because it was so great. What I loved about that scene was Daytak's swagger and saunter. Every scene he's done, this episode and last, he's just kind of flipped his hair, sauntered in, and is like, yeah, I'm doing this thing, and then walks out like nothing happened.
Yeah, he's having a blast. It's like Tony's just having a blast filming his scenes. And what was great about that scene is that despite the horribleness of it, there was this gallows humor. It reminded me of a lot of great science fiction and also Battlestar, in that, even when Rafe is like, oh, firing squad, and Berlin's like, yeah, I know, it's so quaint. Like, that kind of gallows humor, I think, really shaped the show. And I really liked it in these scenes.
It was one of my favorite scenes, actually. Between the two episodes, that scene in particular was my favorite. And it was just seeing Berlin change her range of emotions about 4 times within that one scene. And then Rafe, who was already coming to grips, he was already losing his mind practically when he saw Pilar come into the picture. Now he's leaving his kids because he can't help them. And now he's about to be killed, so he's definitely gone out of the picture, and all he can do is just think about his kids. I mean, he's stuck. He's done.
I keep going back to how they just swoop in, just all of a sudden, and even Stama gets in on the action. Musing's pointed out in the chat room that, Datak shoots the guy, and then Stama, I think, doesn't hesitate to pull the trigger on someone either. And all because both the Tars are acting on behalf of their son. I love how everyone's just kind of focused on family, and that's what kind of puts them all into motion, and it's just fantastic.
And Musings of a Raven is putting some information in the chat room that's making me realize that, yes, Stama is growing because she's doing exactly what she needed to do to grow, and that is do something Datak would do himself. Datak runs the business and feels like he's head of the business because he gets his hands dirty. He doesn't just send somebody out to do it. He went into the tent and he killed somebody as punishment for his gang. He didn't send somebody else to do it. Sama sent a lack in to kill Skeever. Sama's poisoned everybody. She never gets her hands dirty. But this time she is, and she's doing it for a lack.
That's a great point. You can almost see in season 3 that, this whole season has been, you've seen the divergence of Stama and Datak, and how, Stama's growing into her own. She's becoming so powerful. But they're becoming like each other more and more, which is kind of cool to see. It's unexpected. It's not the way that I expected their relationship to, come to a head this season.
Exactly. Best scene by far in my book.
I mean, I could watch that scene as dark as it is. I could literally and figuratively. I could watch that over and over. And then even when another favorite scene is when Rafe, Datak, and Stama are in the pickup, kind of, going who knows where, but they're going after Pilar and everyone. But Stama's sitting in the middle of Rafe and Datak, and it's just like, I want to be privy to the conversations that are happening in the cab of that truck, basically, in a deleted scene, because it's like the weirdest Three Musketeers ever.
Now, I have to say, if Season 3 is going to start off like Season 2 did, and that is with the passage of time in real time, I'm going to be sad, because we're going to miss out on those conversations. We're going to miss out on that chase and how far it's just going to take us, or where Pilar's taking them, because if it's going to be another year, geez, we're going to miss out on a lot.
I know. And you don't get this kind of thing in game. Like, you can't get that in game, really.
No.
Or there's no replacement for it.
So, favorite scenes. Obviously, you heard mine.
Yeah, I think I probably have done all my favorite scenes to death and stopping the recap every 2 seconds. But I did like that both of these episodes played like one major arc. That was great. And then every single scene had a line to remember. I kind of just wanted to tweet dialogue from the shows because they were all such winners. But another favorite scene was Datak eating when, Christy comes in and is like, what are you doing back home? And she's like, you're a bad man. You burned your son. And he's like, it's not like I dropped a whore from the top of the Gateway Arch now, is it? And the way they played the rest of that scene was amazing because Datak is like, what? I thought it was funny. And it's like married with human children or something. It's just really funny.
The delivery was great, and it was kind of like nobody batted an eyelash towards it.
He's like the weird Archie Bunker of New Earth. It's just really, really funny. And then I thought Pilar was amazing. I'm kind of upset that they saved her story arc till the end of the season, but it's just something to look forward to. That was great. But I thought I generally loved basically every scene of these episodes. I thought these were really strong episodes to go out on.
Yeah, and I think the two absolute most powerful scenes for the two episodes were the Camp Reverie scene with Berlin and Rafe, and the Save Arissa or Save the Town scene with Amanda, Kai, and Nolan and Mercado.
Oh, yeah, Viceroy. Yeah, he's always great.
Honestly, I hated watching that scene, but it was a really great scene. It was really planned out well, and it just showed Amanda and her growth. She's always a pragmatist, but she would never have held anybody hostage in season 1. So
that's true.
Kevin Murphy actually made a tweet during that scene, during the East Coast airing, that said basically, Amanda will always do the smart thing even if it isn't right, and Nolan will do the right thing even if it isn't always smart.
And that's...
I had not rooted for Nolan most of season 2 up until this point.
For the most part, and I never root against Amanda, and all of a sudden here I am.
It just
not agreeing
flipped,
with her.
Yeah. And then of course the nod to the gamers about the horses was just funny to me.
And I loved that. See, this is why I appreciate this online community, and especially you gamers, because I knew that joke, and I kept thinking, why do I know so much about horses and Defiance? And it's because of you guys and Twitter and all the people who play the game.
And this is why having such a universe and all of the facts tying in together is so awesome, and why I want more content. I'm not going to stop harping on this, guys. I want books, I want comics, I want audio, web series. I don't care what. Just bring more to the table, because there's so much you can do with this frontier. So, speculations and unanswered questions. We had a couple.
Yeah, I was so annoyed at Doc Yule because she was still covering for Pottinger. I thought it was really weird that she didn't tell Amanda why she actually made an ego version of Kenya. You know, they were playing this off, and maybe it's because she wanted to be on Pottinger's good side, but to me, Pottinger...
She said as much. She says, I expect you to repay my favor.
Oh, but see, and I'm like, but wait a second. Pottinger, to me, from my perspective, is on his way down. Like, the Viceroy's in town. Who cares if Pottinger can help you out?
I'm surprised Mercado didn't end up dead. I was expecting that when season 2 just started, and I'm still befuddled at the fact that he's still around, because I expected Pottinger to do something crazy.
I guess, well, that's actually, you bring up a good problem with Pottinger, is that I think his character started suffering the latter half of the season, because at first he was really interesting. He had all these facets, and then he just became obsessed with Amanda, and that's his only goal. And I think
he's all talk and no play.
Yeah, it makes him really less interesting. So maybe Doc will eventually use him in the future. She's like, well, hey, if I'm going to use this psychopath to my advantage at some point.
Where is Pilar taking Christiana Lack?
What if she hasn't been at this monastery? Like, what if she's lied about where she's actually been? Or maybe she's taking them to the monastery/work camp that she came from. That sounds horrible.
Well, it sounds typical, actually. I just don't know what her motivation is for doing it, why she's doing it in the first place, and whether or not it's for reasons about putting the family together again, or because she's selling them off, you know?
I hope in some way she's colluding with the Votans. I know that's probably hoping for too much, but I want this to lead into something bigger.
Last I remember, she's just as bad as Rafe is when it comes to Votans. Very xenophobic, and the way Quentin talks about how she was treated, I imagine it's the same as Pottinger was. So I don't think she would be colluding with the Votanus Collective. And Alak only did it just to free her. So Quentin.
Quentin, yeah, that's true. And then, yeah, we talked about this with the pods. Like, I'm so worried for Nolan and Arissa because they're in a stasis, and I do think that maybe they're going to go and excavate. I just don't think that you can have this go down and then you be a military coalition and not go check out the site. So I think they're going to find Nolan and Arissa and all these people. I don't know if the Earth Republic or whoever finds them is going to save them, or if they're going to do research or use it in some way that maybe is not, all the way kosher.
So not only do we need to hashtag Renew Defiance, we need a hashtag Save the Pod People.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Pod people all over again. I love it.
And then I still have to ask, and it's not going to be answered for next season at all, how the heck did the TARS get out of that silo?
Oh my gosh, I know. And who, the like creeper that opened the door for them? I would have been like, Pottinger, I'm not doing that. You're gonna have to do that.
Well, he's dead now.
You're gonna have to pay me a lot of money. Yeah, whoever it is.
So, predictions for season 3. You mentioned the Earth Republic's new home base will probably become Defiance. I totally agree with that. And then we've got Nolan won't easily forgive Amanda for her betrayals.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if maybe Nolan's a one and done kind of thing. Maybe he'll be like, okay, that's over. I forgive you. But she was going to take out his daughter. So I imagine that whatever season 3 has in store for us, it's not Nolanda. Like, there would be no shipping of those two.
Well, Nolanda is non-existent.
No longer.
Thanks to Nolanda is no longer. That's great. No, because there's going to a Mandinger.
Yeah, oh yeah. But my only saving grace for that is that they did sleep together, but then in the very next scene, Amanda was already back downstairs where Berlin was kind of drinking out of a bottle and toasting to Tommy. And so at least she didn't stay upstairs and cuddle with him.
True. I think Nolan's going to be womanless for a while, and that's okay. He needs to focus on his daughter and forget the women.
Yeah.
Or getting laid, I mean. Honestly, I don't have very many predictions for the show at all because it's pretty open-ended and it can go anywhere with it.
Yeah.
I mean,
and which is good or bad. So they closed up some storylines, right? And they left open some, but I'm kind of glad they did because if they hadn't had the Tar storyline going, then this almost, let's say it didn't get renewed, it would be a okay place to end. I mean, that would be the death of me, but...
Well, let me say this. I think that Irissa and Nolan are going to be stuck in that pod for quite a while, that they're going to leave season 3 open to develop the story between the Tars and the Macaulays, which is turning into very much a southern story of feuding families. But, yeah, that sounds like a winning plan to me. Yeah. We focused a lot on Irissa this season. A lot. And last season it was all about Nolan, really. And Kenya.
Yeah, and the next season I would love to see the Tars and to branch out in new territories too. So my thing is well, maybe Nolan and Irissa are finally like, hey, let's get out of here. We've been in Defiance way too long, and so we follow them to another, place. I mean, there are so many different ways that the show could go, and
I would be absolutely okay with the fact that Nolan and Irissa are stuck in that pod, and everybody that's stuck in those pods we never hear from again. It's like their end.
Yeah, actually, yeah, no, I could see that. And then, or it would be kind of cool. Again, this is kind of like spin-off. I don't know. I would be curious, now that you mentioned dreams, I would be so curious to know, I just want to see what Sukar is dreaming about in his stasis state. He's dreaming about feathers and top hats and cabaret
dancing.
Yeah, cabaret theater and gladiators.
And then you bring up the fact that Irissa's dreaming, and I just realized something. She could be knocked out in this stasis pod, but she's still got the Kaziri in her, at least one half of it. She's got one key. She can operate the ship. She can easily free them once she comes to.
Oh, that would be great.
There's just a whole bunch of theories out there. There's a lot of predictions you can make. Not a lot I'm willing to bet my life on. Not yet. So, MVPs for the episodes and the season. Michelle, let's go with your picks first.
Yeah, so for episode 12, it was definitely Docule because her lines kept me laughing and her interaction with the ego was just on point the entire time. I just loved her scenes.
Her one-act play.
And her delivery. And then for episode 13, I did put Nolan as my MVP pick, and I'm looking at him like, did I put that? But I did, only because I never root for Nolan. He just always just irks me so bad. I know he's always right, and he does kind of the right thing, but gosh, he gets on my nerves sometimes. But this episode, I was right there with him. Season. Yeah, for most of the episodes, and then all of a sudden in this episode, I'm like, no, Nolan's right. Why is no one listening to Nolan? I felt so bad for him that he was kind of my pick for that episode. And then overall for the season, Amanda, I mean...
Abso-freaking-lutely.
Yeah, she brought it.
She was a consistent roller coaster ride for me. And she actually changed and grew as a character, not like everybody else. She was the one that had the most changes, and she eventually learned to grab her balls and just take charge.
Yeah.
I could have said, grab the bull by the horns, but no, I think that she's grown a pair of balls.
She has. She's definitely got, she's... Yeah.
So,
she's got some cojones on her right now.
Exactly. Now, for episode 12, my pick, I couldn't pick anybody. There was too much going on. I was torn between the scenes with the Tars, everything that was going on with them, because it was just funny, and Tommy's flashbacks, because we were finally learning about Tommy, and, he really did get the raw end of this deal. He was always a supporting character and never able to shine on his own. So I wasn't able to pick.
That's fine. I agree. Tommy, poor Tommy.
And then for episode 13, obviously Nolan. Finally, I was able to root for him. It was just a beautiful thing to see him go after his daughter, rescue her, save the town in the process, and never give up going after her. Never. So I had to root for him. And just for kicks, awards. Let's give out some high school yearbook awards, Most likely to run for mayor of Defiance? I pick Stama. It has to be Stama.
Agreed. And you know what? This might be a way for Daytac to be like, no, just go be in charge of the town, but let me be in charge of the drugs. This is great.
She's so drunk with power right now. Being the mayor is just the next logical step. I mean, Daytac did it, and he won. Can you imagine Stama? Yeah, definitely.
That is true.
Best relationship in Defiance. There are so many relationships. Which was the best one? The one that wasn't so screwed up. Honestly, I'd have to go with the young Tars, with Alak and Christy. I mean, they were able to sort through their own marital problems, all on their own, and they're all the better for it.
Yeah, they're a pretty solid couple, I have to say.
Most clueless player in Defiance. Who was the most clueless? Who would you have picked?
Let's see. I would probably gone your route. You know what? I might have said Churchill, but he's not clueless. He's just sweet. He's a sweet bioman guy.
He's childlike in his mentality. I would have picked Treasure Doll because she really is clueless.
Oh, that's right. Poor girl. Oh my gosh, I've already forgotten about her. Oh.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have to give it to Kai because he really is clueless. He was just kind of falling on himself.
Yeah, he's like the definition of clueless. That's incredibly true.
Most likely to be star in season 3. Who would you pick?
I agree with you, Ben. Berlin all the way.
Yes. Berlin has so much potential, and you know what? Now she's so disillusioned with E-Rep.
Yeah. She needs to have a huge arc in season 3 because there's so much character to pine there. It's going to be great.
Yeah. And then most likely to screw up and never get blamed for it.
Well, I know the one to most likely screw up and always get blamed for it, and that's Nolan. But
well, not just Nolan. Daytac too. They always blame the Tars.
Yeah, that's true.
But to never get blamed for it or to always get away with it would have to be Doc Ewell.
She gets out of every scrap that she's ever been in. Well, she even gets out of Camp Reverie.
This whole thing was her fault. She got the two Kaziris together into Orissa.
Oh, that's right. Back in season 1.
And she didn't realize the implications. She didn't know what she was doing, or so we were told. This is all her fault. She started this.
And she didn't even mention that part at all this season.
No. And then lastly, person who least deserved what they got.
My pick, because it's so recently scarred into my memory, is poor Tommy. I mean, come on. Jeez, he's like the best person in Defiance as far as moral compass goes.
Well, there was so many to choose from. There was Churchill, there was Riga, there was Kenya, there was Jared, and of course there was Tommy. And unfortunately, Tommy has been embedded in us for so long, he would have to get this award. But don't think I didn't consider every single one of those. Churchill hurt when he died. Jared, when he was killed, that was the first innocent victim.
Yeah, and we all were really fond of Jared just because, Jess Nichols and her Liberata playing, so that was kind of a tough one to stomach. I wonder if the writers actually intended for the fandom to take that one as hard as we actually did.
Right, because he was just doing what he was told.
Right.
So that's pretty much it for the recap for the last 2 episodes of Defiance, and you know what? It's going to be missed. We're finding ourselves twiddling our thumbs on Thursday nights, hoping to join the fandom on Twitter. Renew Defiance hashtag is still going strong. We do like to hear from the cast, and we miss them dearly already.
Off the set.
Not much going on, Ben. So we've got no news on renewal, and only the last thing we even got about it was, I think September 5th. I don't know what today is, but it was a few days ago. And, Ted from Sci-Fi said, Defiance and Dominion have not been renewed, and he's hoping there will be news on Defiance and Dominion soon. And, it's so vague, and who knows what's going to happen, but I'll keep hope alive. But
Right.
This is just, they're dragging their feet. This is ridiculous. If they renew it, you should have really renewed it a long time ago, because you're missing out on some really good...
It could definitely be a ploy. It's bringing out the fandom. The fandom are more active on Twitter now. They're tweeting Renew Defiance. They're bringing up this feelings of, we have to save the show. It could definitely be a ploy to get more viewership.
Yeah, I really, really hope so. As a side note, I was on Roku. I don't know if this is a thing, because I usually don't watch it on Roku because I bought the season elsewhere, but Sci-Fi doesn't have the full episodes up on their Sci-Fi Roku app, which I found really annoying. And it's not one of the featured shows anymore.
Sci-Fi has a couple apps. I know the one on Windows 8 does the same thing. It only does clips. But there's another app, and I believe it's on Android, that actually shows the episodes. I can watch them on my Xbox, and they only ever show like the most recent 3 anyways. But if you have Amazon Prime, you can watch them on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, that's where Amazon Prime and Google Play, that's basically where I watch them.
So, in the meantime, we can relive Defiance by rewatching with those in the UK.
Yeah, I'm really excited to do this. I can't wait to, start the first episode, which I don't even think I even remember at this stage. But the season starts there on September 18th, which is a Thursday, I do believe. So we'll be rewatching with them. I think it'll be around 4 p.m. Eastern time in the States, but I'll watch and tweet along with them.
4 p.m. in the States, man, I'll be at work and
I know, I probably will
Twitter.
too.
But
this is why I have the episodes on my phone. And here's hoping my supervisor and boss never listens to this podcast, but he does watch Defiance, so...
Yeah, I talk about Defiance at work, and everybody thinks I'm talking Greek.
Oh, no. Yeah, I have one. My boss actually really likes it, so... So,
no, the only people I get to interact are with you guys. Yay!
Yay, fandom.
Favorite tweets during the episode?
Christina Pesix, she played Treasure Doll in the episodes, rest in peace. She said, tweeting is so much harder now that I have no idea what's going to happen. So it's just, it made me laugh because, hey, once you're killed off, you don't have access to those scripts. So
exactly.
It was pretty funny. And then Kim Dawson, at KDawson424, said, for the love of God, someone take the food away from Daytak. And this was actually a discussion at Dragon Con because of the way Daytak has eaten his food this entire season. He's like an animal that just goes after it. And so that tweet struck a chord just because it's been an ongoing topic. And Tony just kind of, slurps the food up at any chance he can get.
That's quite funny to me. I absolutely love it because he's a better man than you. He's of the higher Lero, and that's the way he's going to do it. He's going to eat like a slob, and he's going to make you look at him and watch. Yeah,
it reminds me of like old English kings or something back in the day where they're just they got their turkey legs and they've got their just everything and they're just stuffing their. He's royalty. He thinks he's hot stocko. Which is actually the Twitter handle of one of your favorite tweets.
Yeah.
But Kevin Murphy also says, and now we know Yule has a crush on Amanda. Only your imaginary dead wife will give it to you straight. Which is kind of a funny pun since we're talking about Yule having a crush on Amanda. But I just like that he acknowledged that because that was one of my favorite lines in the episode.
It's funny that they never actually acknowledged anything after that, or it never brought it up. And I hope they do something with that in season 3 because that's kind of awesome.
Yeah.
Not a ship I would have imagined happening, but I guess you can ship anybody, right?
That's right.
So I picked 4, and most of them were East Coast, but a couple were West. And obviously, Botanophile always comes out with the funniest tweets. He quoted Daytak when he was in bed with Stama, says, "I will not be handled." And his reply was, "That's not what you said in prison, Daytak." No touching. So, Lonely Nerdette, actually, before she found out what happened to Tommy, unfortunately, tweeted at Duchesne during the flashback of him and Arissa in bed together. She says, if the whole thing with Arissa doesn't work out, I'd say yes. Absolutely. It was adorable. It was heart.
I love it.
Touching. I loved it. And then one of the writers of Defiance, Brian Alexander, who is Hot Stocko, he goes, "Wait a second, it's 2047. Nicole Munoz and Justin Rain are her kids. She is the mother of the future," in reference to Linda Hamilton and the Terminator. And then Shannon O'Hara, who is Sci-Fi Girl and also one of the hosts of Voices of Defiance, said, "Holy Stocko, is Nolan crying? There's no crying in Defiance."
That makes me laugh so hard just because it's a great quote from a good movie. And also, I had this kind of same reaction when Nolan was crying. It's like, wait a second.
So I absolutely loved all of these tweets, and it's amazing how well this fandom, how attached this fandom is to this show, and how much they live this show. So I love these live tweets. I love reading them. So then we have some news from Dragon Con and PAX. You went to Dragon Con. You spent some quality time with some of the fandom over there, some of them being in the chat room.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and hopefully, I have to get my bearings back from Dragon Con, and hopefully in future episodes I think we got some audio from it, so we'll share some of that with you all, with listeners. But just a quick kind of recap of it. There were a lot of fans there from Twitter, which was awesome. So I met Dickens. I won't say her real name right now, but we featured her on the show. And so Death to Dickens, I met her, hung out with her all weekend. Hellbugs, of course, was there. Pantrocious was there. Jay Russie was there. Space Chicken was there. She's on Twitter a lot, as well as many other fans, Midori Kai, and a bunch of cosplayers. So one thing about Defiance, and a Defiance panel, there were 4 at Dragon Con. Cosplayers were everywhere, and they were bringing it this year just like they brought it last year. There was Amanda cosplayer that was a madam one day, and then the next day she was back to being mayor. It was very cool. There were a bunch of Stamas. There was even a Christie cosplayer who was hanging around with an Alat cosplayer. It was fantastic. And then one that got a lot of attention was Tommy. So we had someone dress up as Tommy, and it was really cool. The cast got really excited at one of the panels and brought him up on stage. And Tony even phoned up to Shane and was like, "Hey, you won't believe who I just found here." And it was a cool moment. I felt really good for the cosplayer. That was pretty awesome. And he did it really well. His gear, everything he had was like straight Tommy deputy. He did it very well.
That's pretty cool.
The one thing that I did have not a problem with, I get it. Like we don't want to spoil anything for anyone, but the panels kind of happened after the season finale. So a lot of people had probably watched it. I knew kind of what happened, but maybe a lot of people didn't get a chance to watch it. So all the panels had to be kept spoiler free, which I understand, but if you kind of want to pontificate on what the characters are going to go through in a potential season 3, maybe that's not the best strategy, but either way, the panels were awesome. The cast is getting better and better at keeping them light and keeping them interactive. At one point, Tony picked up his phone and made everyone in the audience stand up and just shout "Renew Defiance," and it was really cool. And Jesse Rath is actually really funny on panels, and he's great.
Because he belongs. He's such a geek.
He really is. Oh, and the best part of, I didn't even see this, and this wasn't even on a Defiance panel, but on a Being Human panel, because Megan Rath, his sister, is on that show.
Or was. The show's been canceled, yeah.
Oh, man, just another good show.
It ended well. It was very well done. It lasted quite a few many seasons, and yeah, I knew her before I knew Jesse.
Oh, so awesome. So that's how shows should end, right?
Yes.
They still get love. At Dragon Con, it doesn't matter if your show's canceled or going off the air, you still get a lot of love. So they had a panel, and they introduced Megan Rath, and Jesse walked out wearing a wig, and pretending to be his sister. And I heard stories of it, and I heard it was just hilarious. And he just was kind of cosplaying her and flipping his hair. And he's a card. He was having so much fun. It was great.
It's funny, as he actually played her brother on Being Human.
Oh, that's so funny. Talk about not having to like work too hard. Seeing as how that's exactly what they are. For the panels for these things, you don't really learn too much because, the actors don't actually know much about what's going to happen. But there were some cool things about the set. Someone asked, like, what's your favorite part of the set? And they let us know that there's so many parts of the set that they have that we've never seen, that have never been on camera. And someone mentioned one, it's like a basketball court, but it's basically 2 basketball nets, and they're side by side, but one is like clearly Sensoth height, and the other one is really tiny. It's like Liberata height. And that's just, that's so funny. That kind of world building, I wish we could. Hopefully in season 3 we'll get like a New Earth basketball game or something.
They built the set, and I wouldn't doubt that eventually we'll get to see it all.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, that's a reason to renew. It's a sunk cost, so let's go ahead and get our money's worth out of the set that we build.
So Dragon Con sounded like a blast, and we'll go into more details later when you get that audio all done, and we get to talk about how you got to live tweet with some of the cast.
Yeah, they were very cool, and an interesting tidbit is sometimes they're as confused as we are about what is actually going on. So
that's funny.
Drama in Defiance.
That same weekend, we had PAX Prime
up
in Seattle. We sent our intrepid reporter, Chris, who is also the former host of the show and runner of the network. He runs all of MMO Reporter. He went up and he went ahead and did an interview with Trick Dempsey and talked about all the new stuff that's coming. You can watch it on DefianceReporter.com. There's a link in the show notes if you guys want to watch it. They were discussing the Aftermath update, which is supposed to hit sometime in the end of September. It's the conclusion to what's been going on in the game, as well as how we find out what happened in the show over in San Francisco. So that's going to be pretty interesting. There's going to be a final 7 missions for Season 2. There will be 3 new instances. There's new enemies, and they're going to just wrap up the Season 2 storyline in the game before they move on to working on Season 3 content. We did get to see a new skin for the Dodge Durango. They call it the Dodge Hellfire. Very, very, very redneck. It's got flames in front. Flames make it go faster. Interesting paint job. But Trick also showed off some of the new synergies and effects in game. Some of the new synergies are actually pretty interesting because they work more like what you would find in an MMO than you would in a shooter. More support-based synergies. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of that when the update hits. And they discussed the Xbox free-to-play conversion. They're still finalizing the details of that, but it should be out shortly before the Aftermath update, so look for that in September. For those of you who have Xboxes and have not played Defiance, this is your chance to get it for free. And that's pretty much all the news we got out of PAX Prime. Trion was focused on all of their games, not just Defiance, so there wasn't a lot of new things on Defiance specifically. Let's go ahead and discuss some coupon codes. Michelle?
Yeah.
Everybody out there, what kind of deals can they expect from listening to this show?
Some pretty good ones, and a new one, so pay close attention. So first, we've got Doghouse Systems. You can use the coupon code MMO Reporter at doghousesystems.com to double your RAM, so definitely check that out. And also GoDaddy, so you can put your website to work while you play and register the domain that helps people find you online before someone else beats you to it. You got to snatch up those domain names because, hey, everyone's online, right? So you might as well get the domain name you want, a.k.a. maybe someone should go buy Renew Defiance, like right now. So visit GoDaddy.com, and you can enter the promo code MMO30 to save 30% on your next order. So that's quite a bit when you think about it. So check out GoDaddy.
Yes, please do. Some last-minute announcements. I'm going to mention the Arc Hunter codes. Even though the show is a week out later than it should be, these codes are still valid. The Arc Hunter codes are Defiant, Defiant, and Windfall. This one has only been found on the forums, but it is the 13th code that was promised to us. Windfall, Windfall. Make sure to enter it at defiance.com/ego to get this week's rewards of the Defiant Few outfit and a Tier 4 lockbox. Just remember to redeem them before Tuesday, September 16th for the first one, and Friday, September 19th for the second one to claim that in-game loot. And for those listeners who stuck around, here's your chance to get an in-game exclusive PAX Vibroblade skin by entering in the following code. So listen up. Charlie Whiskey 2 Romero, Tango Niner Niner 7, Zulu Foxtrot Tango X-Ray, Charlie Golf Tango Juliet Echo Lima 2 X-Ray. Go and enter in that code, and you're going to get yourself a really slick blade. It is practically invisible with a black smoke on it, and it just looks great. And it's free, exclusively for people who went to PAX. And for those of you who don't get it, I have one more code to give away, and I will be giving away that on Twitter, so just keep watching the Twitter feeds for that. And then finally, join the Defiance Reporters PC clan, Igni Farouk. No registration is required. Just look for me, Corso Van Lock, in-game. Alrighty, well that was a pretty long show, Michelle. If anybody wants to contact us, what are the best ways they can do that?
Yeah, so stay in touch with us over this hiatus. You can email us at defiance@mmoreporter.com, or you can check out the website at defiancereporter.com, or leave us a voicemail. We'd love to hear from you at 616-666-6778, or you can just click the fancy new widget on the right-hand side of the webpage when you visit. You can find us on many social media outlets. Facebook.com/DefianceReporter. Also on YouTube at YouTube.com/MMOReporterNetwork. And on Twitter, a few different ways. You can always find us Defiance Podcast, Twitter handle at Defiance Podcast. You can find me, Michelle, at Women of Defiance. And you can find Ben at Nebs Insane, even though he does also a lot of tweeting for Defiance Podcast, too.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Michelle, thank you for such a great show. I look forward to the next time we do this. And for those of you who listen to us at home or joined us in the chat room, thanks. Thank you so much. This show would be nothing without you all. And again, for those of you who download us week after week at home, we really appreciate it. We hope you keep doing so. We hope to hear from you. And lastly, we hope to see you in game.